We're here at Al Hijra School and we're the GY9 class. It is the day 8th of June 2016. Can you tell us your name and where you're from?
My name is Dorothy Bradbury. I was born and bred in Birmingham, but my ancestors came from southern Italy in Atina.
Lovely. Can you tell me anything about your background from Italy?
Yes. My great-grandparents came to Birmingham in 1800s. They had a small holding, like a small farm. In Italy, they were very poor peasant people, but the padrones, that is the lords of the manor, wanted their lands. So they were turned off the lands and they came here as immigrants to this country. Some of the Italians stayed in Birmingham, some were in London and Wales and up in the north of England. Different areas of Italy, the northern ones went to London, but the southern Italian ones came to Birmingham, and they formed a community that was called Little Italy, or the Italian Quarter, which is by Eastside Park and where Curzon Street railway station is. My great-grandparents had a boarding house, which is something like a hotel, but it was a boarding house, and it was young men from Italy but other countries that came to stay there because they came to work on the railways and the canals, and they did all sorts of different jobs. They made ice cream and they had barrel organs, which was it was like a machine that made noise, it made music. Sometimes they had a little monkey sitting on and they collected money, or they had baked potatoes machines. But a lot of them were very clever and they made clocks, watches, barometers. They did all sorts of fancy plasterwork. If you go into the new Birmingham Library and go right to the top to the Shakespeare Memorial Room and look at the ceiling, my cousins, the Grego family, did the ceiling in there and they won awards. Well, last year there was a big it was a big anniversary because during the Second World War Italy joined Germany and were our enemies. But the ones that were here, my ancestors and the people that came in the 1800s, were not the enemy. They had got sons serving in the British Armed Forces. But because the Italians were the enemy, the older members of the families were rounded up and taken away to the Isle of Man and put in camps. And some of them were put on ships and deported to Canada. And one of my relatives was with a group of them that was on a ship that was torpedoed and sunk off the Irish coast. Now the families here didn't know what had happened to their families. They weren't treated very well at all. But the community in Birmingham, the heads of the families were running the businesses, ice cream businesses or fish and chips, all sorts of businesses they were running. But because the head of the families had gone, if the other people could not run the businesses, they folded up and they had nothing. Remember, there was no family allowances, no benefits, no national health, nothing. There was nothing for them at all. And they just had to get through the best they could. They were extremely badly treated. And in the war, when the air raid sirens sounded, they wouldn't let them go into the shelters with other people. And when they took the children to school, they wouldn't talk to them. The other parents wouldn't talk to them at the gate. There was lots of segregation. They were very badly treated. My sister and I, when we were younger, and we had shouted at us, dirty itais, and we didn't know what they meant. We were not brought up as Italians because it was not conducive to be an Italian in those days. So I was never taught Italian. I was never had Italian lifestyle, Italian food or anything like that. But it's because I have researched about them and are not willing to have them airbrushed out of the history of Birmingham that I campaigned for so long. There is a saying, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try, and try again. And I did. And last year they were honoured with this big commemoration. And people came from as far as Cornwall, all the way up to Glasgow, and even from Canada. All these came back and families were reunited. It was quite a wonderful day last year. It's coming up to 12. It was on the television, it was on the radio, it was in the newspapers. But this is to find my roots, my family, and the way they were treated. And personally, I was horrified. So thank you for listening to me and showing interest. You should never forget your roots. They are important.
What inspired you to start doing this research?
Pardon?
What inspired you to start doing this research?
Because I wanted to know about them and because they weren't acknowledged. You are doing this project to find out about the lost communities of Birmingham. Is that right? Well, the Italians is a lost community. Nobody would acknowledge them. They wouldn't acknowledge them. They are my grandparents and great-grandparents. So I said to them, oh, what am I doing standing here then, if you won't acknowledge that they lived here and these were here? Now, Professor Carl Chin knew the Italians very well, and he wrote about them, and he did the same, a lot of campaigning, the same as I did for it, but he didn't get anywhere either. But I continued. But it is my ancestry. It's where I came from. And nobody was going to take it away from me. But you see, it was this lady and the Friends of Eastside Park who eventually listened to me. And then this is what we had. There's this big celebration last year. And this was a gift. It's very special. Never ever flew over Little Italy when the Italians were alive. So their ancestors saw this. And there were big, tall men who were in tears, right? Crying and putting their hands on me and thanking me. They never thought they would ever see anything like this at all, that they would have been recognised or their families would have been recognised. And the ancestors of the men that went down on the ship, they had never had a funeral and they hadn't got a grave that they could go to. But this last year was the funeral that they'd never had. And the plaque on the wall in the church is like a grave that they can go and see their relative's name on it. So that is what we achieved after 10 years of trying.